Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
So we're getting closer to the end of the year, and sure, there's a lot of things that went on in your life, maybe some things that didn't go exactly the way you expected. What are you forgiving yourself for in 2022? That's our question today. Think about that for a second. And also remember, and we'll get deep into this, how important forgiveness is to move your life forward, whether it's forgiving yourself or somebody else. And she's going to help us out with that. She is a mindset and mentality coach at Phoenix Coaching. Michelle Gauthier is back on the program. Welcome back. How you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing wonderful, and honestly, just can't believe it's almost 2023.
It just has not even sunk in yet. The fact that,
No.
like, when I look at the date on the calendar, or on your phone, or in the screen on the computer in the lower right, it's like, really? Wow! What I thought it was just 3 days ago. How's it moving so fast?
Right? And it feels like December just started, but it obviously hasn't.
So weird. I am. Why? Why are you feeling that and I'm feeling that? What's going on here?
I don't know. I think after the pandemic, time has just been like a really weird concept.
That could be true. That could be true. That we're not keeping track. Although I had a conversation with somebody the other day that time is just an illusion, doesn't exist.
Yeah,
Einstein
absolutely.
even said that. And when you think about it, I know we're digressing here. We're talking about forgive us for digressing. But when you think about it, how do you know something existed in the past? It's based on your memory and or somebody else's memory. But if your recollection is not that clear, could be made up. Like, how do you know it really took place? And the future, talking about time existing or not here yet. So how do you know?
Yeah, and I love that question. And it's fun because our memories is just how we interpreted it at the time. And so it might not even be how it happened. That's just how we believe it happened, which is so fun. And I love memories. And it also goes into this is a really big digression, but it also goes into eyewitness testimonials and how they can be influenced so greatly by just a question you can ask and how they're not actually that reliable.
Yes. And if it's somebody speaking about a trauma that took place and a crime, leave it at that.
Yeah.
The person that experienced the crime to themselves from somebody else can get very emotional, but people can say, well, how do you know that really took place?
Right.
If there was no eyewitnesses, how do you really know? Maybe he or she is acting. How do you know? But then also when I think about whether time exists or not, we do have pictures on our phone.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
and at that point, if it feels true to you, doesn't matter if it really existed. I get yes, sometimes, and that's how families have decade-long feuds because they're holding on to the past. See, I'm bringing it back to forgiveness because they're holding on to something from the past that happened, who knows, let's say 20 years ago. And they've just held on to that for so long. And they're like, no, I was right about the situation. Hear me out, whatever it is. And it's just causing a lot more negativity, frustration, anger, and just disconnection from other people. So whether it's family, friends, loved one, whomever, but yeah.
Yeah. But the bottom line here is we get right back to where we started in our timeline is forgiveness. You need to forgive. And it's so hard to do. It's just whether you're forgiving yourself or forgiving somebody else, you need to move forward. It's been proven, it's been researched that it just provides clarity and opens things up for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I know from my own experience and all of my life experience of studies and whatnot, that when you aren't forgiving, whether it's yourself or somebody else, it's really only affecting you. It's affecting your day to day. You're giving your power away to that circumstance, that person, whatever it was. And you're not living life now. You're always living from the past.
Yes. Yes. Which somehow this tied back into the time thing because you should be living in the present, the now.
Yeah.
If you forget about that situation that you really need to forgive, you're not going to move forward. You can't. There's no way because it's always going to be marinating. I this year had hypnotherapy for
Okay.
forgiveness.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it was pretty powerful. And the hypnotherapist just mentioned and I thought they specialized in it. It
Mhm.
was just one other thing that they do, but to me it resonated. So I was like, sign me up for that. And it was interesting because the person I needed to forgive, you visualize sitting across from that person, speaking to that person.
Mm,
There could be a screen in between you, for comfort reasons,
right.
whatever the situation is. Um, but it felt real, and I didn't even get a full session. There was a tech issue. It was virtual.
No.
Um, Probably lasted about 35 minutes, and
Right.
before it dumped out. But it was definitely beneficial. Just one way, to forgive. How about some other ways? Any suggestions?
Yeah. I love that you said there could be a screen between you, but even just finding someone who resembles the person that you get to forgive and talking to them, saying what you need to say to them. One thing that I've done this year, actually, I think it was like 3 months ago, was I found a like oh, what's it called? Oh, a Qigong video on YouTube. So Qigong is like an energy movement kind of thing.
Just learning about that, and
Yeah,
is it? How do you spell it? Is it Q? Yes.
Qijong.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I had somebody suggest that to me. They're like, just get in your body, get the movement, because movement moves energy in you. And then it was suggested to put on some just like music, just calming something, and just sit and write. So for me, it was
Hmm.
writing a letter to a loved one of just saying things that haven't said yet, and going through that motion, that movement energy. I sat, I wrote, I cried, and then I'm like, ooh, okay. And I was like, I might send it, I might not. That's not important. But the important thing is getting it out of you,
Hmm.
because it's easy to like suppress it or be like, that person's a jerk, I can never forgive them. um but it's not about that person, and yes, they could have done an awful thing. It's not, forgiveness isn't taking away that point.
You're not condoning.
It's, yeah, exactly, it's not making it acceptable, but it's acknowledging that it did happen and kind of leaving it in the past. And forgiving somebody doesn't mean that you have to become best friends with them anymore. It's just clearing them and putting them into whatever area of your life you want to put them in, and be okay with it.
You know what's interesting too, when you do that, and that's great, purging process where you just get it out of you.
Yeah.
As you write that letter, you might even realize some things that you did as part of the conflict. Again, it could be like they did this and maybe you did this, but
Yeah.
this is still inside you that you need to forgive yourself for, to make it a full forgiveness package, if you will, because you
Yeah.
forgive them, but maybe there's something there, but you don't realize it until you write it, and don't type it. You physically have to
Yeah.
write it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's power in physically putting
Yep.
pen or pencil onto paper. And I love it because, so if you're out there and you're going to try that, just write. Set a timer, write for like 10 minutes, whatever amount of time you want to write, and don't edit it as you go.
Mm.
Just write whatever comes, because that's also your subconscious working. So things are going to come up that you've previously been like, oh no, I can't say that, or I can't write that. So just let it go. Just put it all on the paper.
Yeah, just let it flow, and look back when you're
Yeah,
done. What
ex-
you got there.
exactly. And another healing thing, if you do right, you can burn it after too.
Ah,
Like controlled.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, but that's a great idea,
Yeah.
because now it's like you've cast it off into the universe and just like move it away, move it away.
Yeah, exactly. And then you can't hold on to it, because I know in the past I'll go back and read and be like, oh my gosh, remember when I said this, or I felt this way, and then I like relive it over and over again. But
Hmm.
this way it's just like fully getting it out, burning it, so you can't go back and look at it, you can't over analyze it, you can't be like, ooh, I wrote that, I should have said something different. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Um, for you, in terms of forgiving someone, some people, maybe yourself in the past,
Yeah,
have you felt the impact?
absolutely. Yeah. I've done a lot of work on forgiving myself the past few years of just situations that happened. So one, it's in my book. So spoiler alert, not really, but when I was younger, I was sexually assaulted by somebody close to me. And I've been like carrying that with me since I think I was like 10, without like really knowing, but I knew. Um, and so with all the work I've done on myself, with just mindset shifting and really getting clear on who I am, I was like, oh my gosh, like, first of all, I know they don't know it happened. So I've just been like holding on to this for no reason. And then secondly, it's like, it's okay because it took me a long time, but it's okay because I like, it wasn't my fault. It wasn't something that I made happen, even though I was part of it. And I feel like a lot of people get to hear that because I've heard recently a lot of people saying that, like, I should have known better. Well, if I knew earlier, then my life would be different now. And wondering and wishing that things were different, except you can't go back and change the past. So it's being like, okay, acknowledging that thing happened, the way it happened, and then deciding if you want to keep living with that and wishing that you could go back and change it, or be like, okay, it happened. I have no control over that anymore, but I do have control of how I go forward. And that's what I feel like forgiveness is a lot of just reclaiming your own control of your life.
Did you feel that you needed to forgive yourself because you may have thought that you had a hand in it, even though you didn't? But in
Yeah,
mind that, oh, if I wasn't there at that time for this, that, was that still marinating in your mind?
it was the biggest thing that was in my brain was I should have told somebody,
Mm, okay.
or I should have asked somebody for help at the time. And then it's one of those of like, well, now it's too late. And so then I just held on to it. And so there was a part of me that like blamed myself and be like, well, you didn't reach out to anyone. And so you had to handle this by yourself all of these years. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But ultimately it was somebody else. And to your point before, and in just about any situation, it's already off their plate and they
Yeah.
don't even think about it, but we
Yeah.
do and we carry it. I had a thought today. I was at the gym, and I don't know like where it came up, but in a situation I'm involved in
Mm-hmm.
relationship wise, I should have listened to my intuition,
Mm,
and I think I did, but I ignored it like along the way. And I'm not beating myself up for it, but it's like
yeah.
it's the thought that goes around. Yeah, you shoulda known. Well, they say don't shoulda on yourself, so
Yeah.
you shouldn't be doing that. Um, but I don't think to the level where I need to forgive myself for that. But it's I did speak with somebody uh, in my journey, a very intuitive person.
Mhm.
Um, after it was kind of going in a certain direction, and he said to me, "You knew." Very intuitive person,
Yeah.
psychic. Like, legit. It's like, "Yeah, you knew." I'm like, "No, no, I didn't. No, I didn't." Like, "No, you knew." And
Yeah.
as I think about it, yeah, 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 I kinda knew, but I've, like, put it to the side because I don't wanna deal with it. Because if I were to deal with it, it would change everything.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of people are afraid of that change.
Yes.
And so they don't like, especially when it comes to like acknowledging and feeling your emotions, like we talked about sometime previous, is just a lot of people don't want to feel them because as soon as you feel them, one, I know that in the past I felt this way, you don't feel like you'll come back from it. Like you'll be so into your emotions, it's just like a spiral sinking pit of whatever it is. Or two, it's just going to change everything going forward. And we're humans. We like to live in comfort,
Oh, yeah.
even if that comfort is uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Because it's the known. It's the
exactly.
unknown.
Yeah,
And ultimately, to your point, whether I made the change through my, intuition, gut feeling or not, where I am now, is what happened. And everything all over, and dust and pieces have to settle. Still dealing with that, and it you look back, it's like I never thought I'd be here. Yeah, and I
Right.
get here.
Yeah.
But that's the universe. It's got a plan. Whatever's going on there. But goes back to what we said. You can't control it. Some things you just can't control.
Yeah, exactly. And it's being okay with that. Is being okay that you're like, okay, well, I am in control of me. I cannot control other people. And going back to forgiveness, other people, like you, other people, humans, whatever, can be a good human that does bad things. And especially if it's a long time event that you've been holding on to, that person could be completely different now, but you probably haven't opened the door to give them that chance of finding out who they are. Because I know for me, I'm not the same person I was 10 years ago.
Same.
If I said something or did something that like upset someone at that point, I would like to believe now I would be able to handle it differently.
Interesting, because I feel the same exact way. I'm not even 2 years ago, and
Yeah.
but I think that needed to happen. I
Yeah.
wasn't a bad person then. I'm not a bad person now, but it's just different the way you view and handle things because you're given things. Here you go. Now deal with it.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Wasn't expecting that. The car to turn that way and that, to go that way.
Yeah.
How do you deal with change?
That's a big question.
Probably for another podcast.
That could just be a whole other conversation. How do we deal with change?
Or the fear of.
Okay, the fear of. Let's start with that one.
For sure.
So, first of all, change is inevitable. It's just going to happen. So, really, the fear of change is the fear of losing what you have, or possibly losing what you have. And I feel like a lot of people look at change as a bad thing and that you're going to lose something. But change could be, I'm gaining something. So, like when you're in a relationship, right before you met that person, your change was that person. Or even just a change into a new job. It can be a great thing if you're looking for the great thing. So, fear of change, I get it. I feel it too, especially big changes that seem really scary and can like shatter my world. But change is always happening. Nothing is the exact same it was 1 second ago.
Mm-hmm.
The earth is changing, the air is changing, your cells are changing. But it's really asking yourself, what do you want going forward in life? Do you want to be the exact same person? Do you want to keep having the exact same things that you've been having? And as I said, we can only control us. So other people might be changing, which is inevitably going to change your world. So are you ready to get in it and stop resisting it? Or are you going to just like put the brakes on, be like, nope, no change, nothing I want, without knowing the beautiful life it could bring you?
Yeah. Yeah. And you need to open your eyes up to that.
Yeah, exactly. And I know it can be difficult because we haven't had it yet. So it's easy to focus on well, this is going to change. This is going to be different. I won't have this anymore, whatever it is, instead of looking at like, well, what greatness can come out of it? And is this putting me on the path that I really want to be on?
This is bringing me back to a song. Did I ever mention the song The Fuse?
No.
Do you? Okay. Came out years ago, like, gosh, I don't know, like 40 years ago. Jackson Brown is the artist, and the song is called The Fuse. And basically, check out the lyrics. It's like, it's what we're talking about because
I love it.
the fuse is our life. And the fuse, it was lit when we were born, and
Yeah.
you can't stop the fuse from burning. And there's a great line what you just said. Whatever it is you think you have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Like you think you have all these things, they could be gone tomorrow. Just like
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how people like, well, I have a stable job. And I'm like, okay, but that job isn't promised for the next 20 years.
I laugh at
Tomorrow they could go bankrupt. Like, you don't know.
exactly. There is no loyalty in
Yeah.
occupations, jobs. Yeah, you could be bye-bye. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can't. And even, your house, be keep gone tomorrow. You don't know what's
Yeah.
going to happen. you can't put that value on those possessions and those things because it could go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that's why I love working with people on their mindset, so that no matter what happens, no matter what comes your way, you know you can handle it. You know that you'll be okay. Even if you lost your job, your house, and your car tomorrow, it might be really rocky, but you'll know that you'll get through it and figure it out.
We should just make you the "you'll be okay" coach because it is.
You'll be fine.
You'll be fine, coach. Because I think if you talk to 100 people, I'm going to say 94, 95% of them will be the people that say, I can't, no, I can't deal. No, you change this,
Yeah.
you change that. I can say that because I was one of those people.
Yeah.
In a big way.
Absolutely.
And like
Absolutely.
worry about things, anxious about like, what if this, what if that, I worked way too much when I should have focused more on my kids a little bit more.
Mm,
Not crazy, but why? Well, I'm not
right.
a workaholic. It's because I was worried. Well, what if I lose this part of that job or that part of the job? Then I got to support my family. Blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Don't.
Yeah. Exactly. And I love that you said anxiety, because then something came up for me and it's like, what's the worst thing that could happen? And
Mm,
I've used this with my own anxiety. It's like, okay, if I did this, what's the absolute worst thing that could happen?
ring the bell on that one.
And then like bring it to mind, say it out loud, whatever you got to do. And what's the likelihood of that happening? And if that happens, okay, cool. What are we going to do about it?
Right.
Like,
I
because
could go ahead.
most of the time it's just like, I'll be really uncomfortable, or like that person will like judge me. It's like, okay, so then what would happen? Like if they judged you, then what? Like,
Michelle, it really does make you think because a lot of us will just let that stuff float in our mind
yeah.
without questioning it.
Yeah.
And "Oh, but if that happens, then that happens. But instead of saying, what's the worst that could happen? And when you start looking at it that way, it's like, wow, it's really not that bad. Why am I worrying about it?
Yeah. And like if that thing happens, so what? Then what? Like, are you going to be okay? If yes, then okay. So let's give it a shot.
Have you done this? Because I know you've been on a journey. We all are.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself, I'm trying to describe this better, making yourself more numb to those things that bother you or worry you to the point where it's just like, I don't worry about that. Just let it roll, let it roll.
Yeah. So more of just like not giving it my power.
I guess that's the same thing.
Or yeah, like not letting it consume me. Yeah.
Yeah,
I have been focusing on that, and like every day's not perfect. I still have the days that it's like
sure.
a downward spiral and like
Yeah.
cool. But yeah, absolutely. The more you practice
Mm.
looking at it differently, the more naturally it's going to happen.
So I had a text exchange a little while ago with somebody,
Mhm.
and something took place, personal situation, and they were like, "Oh, I'm really sorry you're dealing with that." Wow. And I just wrote back, "Thank you. Nothing surprises me.
Yeah.
Nothing. It's really the way it is. Like
Yeah.
nothing surprises me anymore." And I think, yes, that's a good thing because you don't freak out. Like, all right,
Right.
well, all right, we'll fix that. We'll work on that, and we'll get on to the next thing. Okay.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's just knowing that whatever happens, you'll be fine.
Yeah. Well, you got to, like you just said, you got to say to yourself, what's the worst that could happen?
Yeah. And if it already happens, say like a catastrophe of some sort, examples don't come to my head that fast, but a catastrophe
Yeah.
is just like, well, it already happened. So why am I worrying about what would happen if it happened? Because it already did.
The only thing I will say based on what we're saying is the language you use. You always want it to be positive. So what's the worst that could happen? We're doing that for a reason, but
Yeah.
I used to say, well, it could be worse. It could be worse. And well, you're just telling your subconscious, make it worse, make it worse.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like yes, it can be worse. Absolutely. And that has gotten me through some things, but also that's focusing on what worse things could happen
Exactly.
instead of how do I get to handle this right now the best way I can.
And what's the worst outcome of that situation?
Yeah.
Which is really not that bad. More
Not
times
usually.
than not, usually. I have
No.
almost all the time. It's not going to be as crazy or bad as your mind is making it to be because
Yeah.
it's still up here. You didn't verbalize it or even write it down.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just, even when you think of the worst thing, what's the probability of it happening? Because if it's only like, well, it's like 20% chance, then your odds are pretty good.
Yeah. Well, they've done research and it still comes around every couple of years, and it's almost like the same percentage that 90% of the stuff you worry about doesn't ever take place. Doesn't ever
That's true.
happen.
Absolutely.
You're wasting your time.
Yeah.
And we started talking about forgiveness today, and the cliche hit me between the eyes a second ago.
Mhm.
Forgive and forget.
Mm.
And it made, when you're a kid, you hear, well, forgive and forget. I'm like, well, okay, whatever. Now, when you
Mm.
think about it, it's like, yeah, forgive and forget. Just like move past it.
Yeah, and I love that because when you fully have forgiven, whether it's yourself or somebody else, you can think of that instance, whatever, but you don't have that same like body reaction to it.
Yeah.
And so you're like, okay, yeah, I remember that happened. Cool. Okay, I've moved on.
Yeah.
And so you don't necessarily forget what happened, which is fine. You can, depending what it is. Like some things you'll just hold on to, but the emotion tied with it will be much different.
It almost turns into a like when you think about that situation that you need to forgive, like a whoa, but then you turn it into a whatever. It's almost just
Yeah.
like, whatever. Okay, yeah, that happened. I'm past it. You're not going to totally forget it,
No,
uh, unless you believe that there is no time, so then it didn't exist. But whatever, that's not.
that's a whole other
That's
thing.
a whole. So you're definitely somebody that can help somebody move past a lot of stuff, as you have. And that's what I love about you. You've walked the walk, you talk the talk.
Yeah.
You're not just somebody that's, let me get a certification. I want to help people. You do, but there's
Yeah.
way more to it than that. What's your website?
It's phoenixcoaching.org.
Yeah. And free consult, people go there and they can start the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a chemistry call. It'll be on a tab at the top. So that's my free consult. So yeah, you can book from there.
Yeah. Start forgiving, start thinking about it. And I'm so glad, Michelle, you talked about writing it down and burning it because that is, you have to write it down.
Yeah.
It's essential.
Get it out of the head.
Get it out of the head.
Yeah.
Awesome talking with you today.
You too, Steve. Thanks so much.
And I can't believe I'm saying this, but have a great holiday. It's almost like it's here already.
Yeah, happy holidays.
Happy holidays. That sounds weird. All right, we'll talk soon, okay?
All right.
Thanks.
Bye, Steve.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.